One of the most beautiful aspects, I think, about God's personality is his patience with his people. We see that played out all the time throughout Scripture. When people are rebelling against him, he's always continually looking to forgive his people, to restore his people. And in Romans 9, Paul talks about how doesn't God have the right to do whatever he wants with his vessels? He's the potter, we're the clay. Who can resist his will? And ultimately, it's an empirical question. Like, we all resist God's will. And if you ever talk to someone who is a potter and they've dealt with pottery and they're using that clay and they're molding it, they would say that it has a mind of its own at times, and it resists the hands of the potter, tries to kind of do its own thing, and the potter has to put their body weight into it to make sure it's centered. And I think it's kind of a good analogy for how God is with us. Like a potter, he's very patient with us. And like clay, there are times where we resist his will and we try to do our own thing. And ultimately, God is the one who's sovereign. He's ultimately the one that's going to decide how I'm going to use you, how I'm going to shape you. We make our journey in this life so much more difficult if we resist his will. If we simply acknowledge him, he is sovereign, he is God, he can do with us what he wants to do. And when we submit to that process, it makes life so much better. And then he's able to mold us into the vessels that he desires. I, for one, want to be a vessel of glory. I want to be a vessel that is used by him. I don't want to be a vessel that is resistant to his will and is formed badly because the potter, right, he can do whatever he wants with me, but if I'm bad clay and if I'm resisting his will, I'm just going to be tossed out because I'm no good. And as I've been thinking about that, and as Paul really is going back to Jeremiah 18, when he tells him, go to the potter's house. And he's like, don't I have the right over you? Can't I do with you what I want? And the question is absolutely yes. God can do whatever he wants to do to us. But yet we see Israel's response so often that they rebel against his will. So back to Paul's question, who can resist his will? Well, we all can. But it's futile. There's no point in resisting his will because ultimately he will have his will fulfilled in the end. The question is, are we going to be a part of that will? Are we going to play our part as submissive participants in his kingdom? Are we going to be vessels of glory by submitting to the hands of the potter? That's my encouragement for you today, to consider that God the Father, he is the potter. He ultimately has control over our lives. But the question always rests on us of, are we going to resist his will or submit to his will? I hope you have a blessed day